that our water productivity is also lower as compared to India, but also our land productivity is also lower. So we are not smart enough to work on this. This slide you can see over here, that's basically taken up as for the wheat water productivity. This is the wheat area, that is the wheat is being grown in Pakistan and as well in the Indian side. And here you can see that specifically in Indian Punjab and Haryana states, you can see over here that's the water productivity as far as wheat is concerned is very high in these areas. But when you come back in Pakistan, you can see in some areas we're having high water productivity, but most of the time the water productivity is lower. So that's alarming. And one of reason of this, which I actually tried to figure it out, that here you can see in this this graph, about more than 98% of wheat area in Indian Punjab normally they sow it before 17th of November. That's very critical time period, because our agronomists normally say that if you really want to have higher yield as far as wheat is concerned, it should be grown before 15th of November. So in Indian Punjab side, they are actually growing, or they are sowing their wheat about for 98% of total area of their wheat was under wheat before 17th of November. But if you look at Pakistani side or Pakistani Punjab, so only 7% at that time was under wheat, and then 17%, then 22%, and then up to 19th of December, we were keep on, sowing wheat. So that's also the one reason of this lower yield in this particular region of Transboundary Indus Basin. So we have to think on it as well. Then if you talk about water security, so you are well aware of all these figures, but I just want to remember you that about 30% reduction in storage capacities due to climate change and siltation that we are expecting, in the near future as well. And reduction in river flows, that's also alarming, that due to these climate change and controls over the rivers that are actually coming from upstream riparian. So Indus about 11% reductions, then Jhelum 32%, then Chenab 25% reductions in river flows. Then we have Ravi almost gone, 87% has flows have been reduced, as well as Satluj. Only 5% flow is coming during flood season. So almost 95% of river flows has been cut down from Satluj. And if we talk about overall, then we are having shortfall of about 27% of this is like last 20 years that actually showing this 27% of overall reduction in our flows. Few reasons of this, we are having actually developed a number of reservoirs both sides of the Transboundary Indus Basin, including Mangla, then Tarbela, then Phakra, Phong, and Pondo Dam were also being built in Indian side of Indus. But now the new dams are also being in construction, that is Dayamir Bhasha and Kuramtangi, Manda and Pakistani sides. Then we have Nima Bazgu, and then Chutak, and then Beglihar is also in the way. So these all dams are also trying, contributing towards storage, but also in the same time, if we talk about the upstream riparian, then those dams are used to divert water for their use. That is logically looks good, because if you are from the other side of the boundary, then they are actually using for their own benefits. But if you talk about for Pakistani perspective, then it's always a risk for Pakistani agriculture as well. Then there are some conflicts between both of the countries, like dispute over the Salal Dam, it's going on. Controversy on the Wular Barrage, Baglihar Dam created severe conflicts between Pakistan and India. Then Kishan Ganga is also there. And I think Meher Ali Shah will talk more on those disputes, I guess, because he's from Indus Water Commission, so he has more knowledge on it. But the recent conflicts created around were like 57 meters high Nimu Bazgu, then there was Chutak Dam, Thulbul Navigation Project, then Rathal, Mear, Low Khalnai, and Pakhal Dul hydroelectric power. So all these storage facilities are they're also river runoff type of hydroelectric units, but in the same time they're also being used for reduced flows or managing the flows. In other words, if I talk about. So these are actually real threats to the water security of Pakistan. And here is actually, I mean, in this figure, in this diagram, you can see that this is the series of dams that are going to be constructed at River Chenab. So here we have River Chenab, then there are a lot of about 19 or 18 proposed projects that are being I mean, the upstream riparian is planning to construct on those areas. So it's a large number of dams that will actually it's a cascade of dams basically that will be built on those on the River Chenab. Then some other I mean there are basically offtaking canals that are being constructed upstream of Marala. That is Tavi lift station and then Raya lift station. So this is Tavi somewhere here, and this is Raya. So these are also, I mean, the canals that are being used to divert water from Chenab River towards Indian side of agricultural areas. Now there is another. I mean, this was the power of surface water supplies, and then if we talk about the groundwater abstractions and depletions, we are really second most overstressed aquifer in the world. And here you see this particular map is basically developed. It's irrigation through groundwater. So normally most of the time in Indian side of Punjab, this is basically Bistawab over here, and then Punjab, and then Haryana. So most of the groundwater is being pumped from this particular area of the basin. So and similarly, if you talk about the depletion in the aquifer, then of course if we are having more abstraction over here, then we do have more depletion in this particular area. So in this part of the map, you can see that over here we are having this is again Bistawab, and then this is the Punjab and Haryana states of India. There is a lot of depletion as well. And in one of my work, we actually accounted that about 31 billion BCMs were depletion over the year, but about 21 BCM was from this particular part of the basin. So and this is also this is very famous movie that was actually developed by NASA, and it's based on Rodal et al.'s findings about groundwater abstraction and depletion in this particular part of India and Pakistan, and that actually confirms that this particular area that is Indian state of Punjab and Haryana, here we're having a lot of abstractions as well, or depletion in the aquifer. So we have to very careful in this when we talk about the Indus Water Treaty, because normally it is based on the surface water flows and all those sharing of surface waters, but we actually forgot to put in something about groundwater as well. That has to be taken into account. I don't know how, but it should be. And if we talk about the other side of the country, that is again Kabul River Basin. That is the Kabul River itself is adding a lot of flows to the Pakistani side. So and there are a number of projects that are being developed on River Kabul that actually will reduce these flows as well. So the developed control structures, and there are about 1.8 million acre foot that is being controlled in this part of the basin. But there is also plan to have 3.6 million acre foot of more, they will develop more control structures. And then about 3.6 million acre feet of water will also be, reduced from that is coming into our system, our river system. So on both sides of the basin of the Pakistan, Indus Basin, Afghanistan side, as well as Indus Basin Indian side, So we are having, water availability issues and threats. So although there is a treaty between Pakistan and India, but we don't have any treaty between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So we have to think on that as well. Thus, that aspect that we have to develop some sort of treaty or how to deal with this shortage that will be in near future. So we have to take care of that shortage as well. So these are some recommendations at regional scale that we have to do some sort of integrated water sources management at a basin scale and beyond political boundaries. Well, like Dr. Noor Khan has already mentioned that this treaty was survived like 4 wars even between the two countries, and it will survive. It is going on to survive, but we have to do some sort of integrated, holistic water sources management approach. We have to think about climate change and its threats to water availability and food security in the transboundary context. Then sustainable surface and groundwater development. Yeah, this is very important. And Dr. Noor Khan was also talking about that we have to think about sustainability of the water available in this part of the basin. And yeah, we have to do some rainwater harvesting and aquifer recharge techniques as well. Then exploration of hydropower potential that we should we are actually initiating it, but we should have been more focused on it. Then water saving technologies to increase agricultural efficiency. This is also important at the farm level. Then invest in green infrastructure like pipes and treatment plants, and green infrastructure as well, like wetlands and healthy watersheds. As well as we have to treat, reuse and recycle available waters. And if we talk about at the farm scale, then we have to move towards precision agriculture technologies. We are still talking about those things. We don't have this type of technologies available for the farmers. So we have to do, if we really want to improve our land productivity as well as water productivity, so we have to think on those like soil zoning and precision planting, then precision irrigation, of course, how much irrigation is required at what area. We have to think for acre of land as well, rather than for thinking, for whole acre.
Please try to complete in 2 or 3 minutes. Your time is coming.
Okay, so we have to use these new technologies and to improve the crop health and water stresses in our farms. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chima. I think we should smart enough now, because if there is a 30% reduction in surface flow and 19 projects on River Chenab from Indian side, and groundwater depletion problems and projects in Cobble rivers, we should be smart enough now. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Engineer Nasir Ahmad Gilani. Engineer Nasir is working as a chairman, Development Finance in Economic and Social Council of United Nations. Engineer Gilani has a vast experience working in water management, water planning on national scale. He has worked in Pakistan Council of Research in Water Resources, Islamabad, and he has vast experience as a water expert. So I request his talk will be on transboundary water, peace and human rights. So with this, I request Dr. Nasir Gilani, please share your knowledge to the audience. Dr. Nasir Gilani.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Are my colleagues can hear me? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Yes.
First of all, I am extremely thankful for the Center of Excellence, a mother institution in Pakistan, and extremely distinguished leadership it enjoys to hold a seminar on this vital issue. I'm extremely thankful to my colleague members. They are providing opportunity to share their time and what our thinking process is that has to be articulated in a manner that it encompasses all our input. So we have a shared vision, we have a wider lens, and we have a giant wisdom. Water is scarce and water is contentious. So let me take half a second to share that my own experience is diversified, as I'm a senior fellow in development economics, and I'm also a fellow in Institution of Engineers. But my degree is a graduate war course. So considering all this conflict situation, I will move to share with you one thing, that wars are no solution. Cooperation is solution, and the nation states are the solution. But where we can take the lead into that, why we are so worried here, that water has been essential for life for centuries, from time immemorable. And then history stands witness to it that it is a fundamental right from all times, but it was contentious issues from all times. But now the situation has something more important. Why it is more important? Because water is also important as a food input, because most of the food is produced by irrigation water. And then for drinking purposes, for the hygiene, the health, we need water. But more, one area is the livelihoods, because whether it is a livestock, whether it is a mining, whether it is industry or commercial activities, all need water. So what I suggest that we move to this issue with the angle of human rights, because that would be much lesser contentious issue. All the people in the world have agreed to that. All the nations have agreed to that. Let's see what the Geneva Convention says. And the Geneva Convention has many conventions itself. In 1949, it has about two areas. There is Convention 3 and the Convention 4 in the Geneva in the same year. That Article 20, 26, 29, and 46 speaks about water as a human right. And the second convention, Convention 4, also speaks about water in Article 85, 89, and 127. And then additional protocols were signed in 1977. And those two protocols, Protocol 1 and 2, both include water as human rights. In Protocol 1, this is Article 54 and 55. And in Article 5 and 14 of the Protocol 2, it is mentioned like that. Next. Next, please. Yes. Then there are covenants which also supports it. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights also mention it. But then there were a problem of interpretation, whether it is a specific one or it is interpreted one. But then the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights affirms that right to life. A right to life has further defined by the according to the Human Rights Committee, HRC, adopting a general comment on interpretation of such a right would nevertheless require the inclusion of protection against arbitrary and intentional denial of access to sufficient water, because this is one of the most fundamental resources necessary to sustain life. This is very, very important. This is very, very important. This is very, very important, that protection against arbitrary and intentional denial of access to sufficient waters. This sufficient water has also a lot of definition, but we can discuss it in the next article. Next. Next, please. And then, contrary to that, we can debate environment versus development and rivers to flow versus development. But then comes executive declaration on the right to development. The general comment to the UN Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. The doubt left has been removed to make it a correct legal position. The human right to water is indispensable for leading a life in human dignity. It is prerequisite for the realization of other human rights. Therefore, because the above mentioned general comment which amounts to interpretive instrument for Article 11 and 12. Therefore, we say, and we will continue pressing on that, that water has already been agreed by the world as a human right. The Vienna Declaration itself included it in there. Right to development is a universal right and an integral part of fundamental human rights. Article 8.1 of the Declaration on the Right to the Development says, this states, nation states, not basins, states should undertake at the national level, all necessary measures for the realization of the right to development and shall ensure, inter alia, equality of opportunity for all in their access to basic resources, natural resources, and the water resources. Overarching resolution by the General Assembly of UN, which is Resolution 54 by 175, says the right to food and clean water are fundamental human rights, and their promotion constitute a moral imperative both for national governments and for the international community. To date, only 2 human rights treaties have referred directly to a right to water: the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Because refusal giving water to somebody may cause discrimination, and the children's health and life depends upon water. Water is the web of life and adequate supply. But I said earlier that we can define adequate supply. But what has happened to it? The beginning of civilization, we have been water, and we have essence of life as water. But the problem is here, in last 100 years, the world population tripled while global demand for water has increased 6. This is very important to know, that the population factor is there 3 times, but the water demand has not increased 3 times, it has increased 6 times because of our living styles. We need more water for our food, that we need more meat. We have industrialization, we have urbanization. So that has an implication factor. Today, more than 1 billion people lack water. Yes, we must speak in every presentation that there is a deficiency even today. So making development, other than that what development has reached, something has to be cautious. And the 2.5 billion are without sanitation. But the more important is the people who are hungry. This is SDGs number 2, but let's say this is the core of every problem. Every war starts from this, conflict starts from this, and uncontrollable situation, terrorism is caused by this. That is that 800 people would be hungry by 2050. And if we continue with the speed of the population, we will have to feed 50% more than 9 billion people in coming 2050. So the situation is going to be even worse by 2050. Why I'm talking about long range? Because water is a resource which cannot be managed in days and years. It takes years, it takes decades. So we must understand how we live in the planet. And estimated 14 to 30,000 people, mostly young and elderly, die every day. This is much more severe than this COVID-19. Next, please. So these are the implications. On the same side, water earlier was understood unlimited. Water was considered abundant. Water was later considered finite, a given amount of water. But look on the consumption side, the life pattern, the lifestyle, and the population growth and the GDP growth. My experience on the economic side tells that GDP growth is directly linked with the water availability. Water is the engine of growth. So what we think that water is a diminishing good. Water is a diminishing good per capita. Water is a diminishing good in line with GDP requirement. So 3.2 billion people have water stress. But 1.2 billion people are in severe water constrained agricultural areas. Agricultural areas also have an angle of employment, and not only the food, they have non-farm activities which are dependent upon the agricultural water there. Over 2 billion people live in countries experiencing high water stress. This can cause an understanding of mistrust. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. And if we move to the same thing with the climate change, and we link it with the children's health and displacement, with the migration cause a lot of people disturbance, but also provide the recruits for the insurgencies. So we looked at about 4 billion people, and about 2/3 of the world population experience severe water scarcity at least 1 month of the year. Water is an area where you cannot live with the scarcity in even few days. And 1 month, many crops will die and your livestock will vanish. Next, please. Next, please. Next slide, please. Yes. Considering the stress in the human livelihood, life, and the scarcity of water, there is a possibility that a positive action can generate negative reaction. For instance, a unilateral move by one country to adapt to climate change by building a dam could drastically reduce a river's flow downstream in another country, which could be, in certain times, can lead straightway to wars. But we say the Third World War would be on water. This will not considering the requirements of the downstream low riparian demands by upper regions, and which can lead to serious conflicts leading towards war. The way which transboundary waters are managed affects sustainable development within and beyond country borders. So we must understand that country borders are to be respected. So how we can respect the country borders use, that has to be defined with clarity. Next, please. Next, please. There are hotspots. In the hotspots areas where the stream that is in South Asia, we have a region, then we have a region in Arab world and Turkey, and then we have the regions in Africa and Nile River. But then there are also regions in South of America and Africa. Next, please. Yes. Here you can find there are two types of scarcity. One is the lifetime scarcity with the food and livelihoods. That is the area where the South Asia has its area. The Middle East is there, and the Near East, the top of African continent, and the South Africa. But then the yellow area, that's very important. They also feel shortage of water and scarcity, but that scarcity is more relevant to the economic development. Here comes the priorities. Here comes the human rights. So the human rights are linked with food security and livelihood. Economic development is the second part. Here is the focus of my papers. So we must have to make more investments and more efforts the areas where the water scarcity is threatening life. Next. And in those areas, it could be the Nile River, it could be the Euphrates, but all these rivers and all these people have one thing common, that most of these people have been working together in many, many years. Yes, Ethiopia was not that much part of many agreements, yes, of Nile River, but the Sudan